Here in this video, we will discuss about what is the main difference between the parent and child process, and also what are all the functions of the fork that is carried out at the time of creation of the child process, and then what is Vfork is there. I think it is similar of the function of fork, how it works to create a, a child process, and then later we'll discuss about what are all the differences between fork and Vfork functions. Here we discuss about main difference between the child process and the parent process. The return value of fork that indicate that how the child process starts. When child process starts, it generates process ID. Then it required to run the child process. Parent process ID is required. The values of times and u time value, set time value, what is the current time value, what is the user time value is 0 for child. Initially, all the values supposed set by the 0 when the child process starts. Later, at what time those values are printed, process ID and all other values are required to go for print. The corresponding time values are changed. Initially, it is 0. File lock set by parent are not inherited by child. Whatever the locking process done by the parents, those locking processes are not taken out from the parent to the child. For child, you want to go for create separate locking process or separate locking flags to to execution of the child process. What type of locks are required? Those are set separately, and then which are all alarms are cleared for the child. The pending alarms required when it is initiated, when it is end. All scenario you want to go for set alarm, corresponding alarms are completed for execution of the child. The set of pending signals for child is set to empty set. Usually it is set by an empty. The main functions of forks are the process can duplicate itself so that parent and child can each execute different sections of code. Nothing but whenever the parent that supposed to call the fork function for creating a child process, the clone of parent, nothing but the similar duplicate of the same process, that should be start with a new session for execution of the process, and then create which are all the required for execution of those child process, and also memories are required to hold the information about data segment, stack and heap informations. Finally, the process can execute with a different program. This is a simple C program that returns integer value only when the for function is called, and if it is print the process parent's process, or it possible to go for print the child process same time child process ID and also their parent process ID. If the process is not start execution, that prints some failure is there in fork. For that we write one program in C that return the value in the form of integer. First initialize ID number by integer type value, and when the start execution it print a hello world information. Then assign the process ID for the fork function, nothing but call the fork function for generate or create a process. If ID is greater than 0, then parent process is started, then print this section process ID is printed with the get PID and process identifier. Otherwise, if ID is equal to 0, then start creation of a new process, nothing but a child process. When the child process started, that possible to go for generate two different types of IDs. One is their child process ID, nothing but a created ID of using get ID function, and also it prints their parent process ID, nothing but this child process is inherited by which parent ID. For that we are using get ppid, nothing but their parent ID value is printed. This child process is started from, this is the parent ID, from that it is started. If it is, what is ID value that assigned to the fork executed greater than 0 to parent process ID displayed, otherwise child process information is displayed. If both the conditions are not satisfied, then it tried to go for print for some error is there at time of creation of the fork function, nothing but at time of execution of fork function. That error supposed to go for display after execution of this program. Yeah, this is another type of the fork function. It is called Vfork. It is working, the procedure is similar, the same as the fork function, how it works, and create the child process for execution to generate corresponding process IDs. It is used instead of to create a new process when the purpose of a new process is to execute in new program, nothing but it calls some functions, calls some other information that's supposed to execute it. When normal program execution, it calls the some other informations. The child runs in the same address space as parent until it calls either exe or exist function, nothing but whatever the location try to execute when the parent process, because we want to go for switch on to the some other process execution, the normal things of information be hold on the stack and then control transfer to the running of the child process, then automatically it calls the space for child process, and then it start execution of child process. When child process complete through exec function or execute the corresponding function, then back to the normal process called stack pop, then normal things should be executed. Otherwise, in between that any errors are generated, call exit function and you terminate the child process. And then V4 guarantees that the child runs first and then until the child calls execute or exit function, nothing but it's supposed to give the guarantee that corresponding the for function that start execution V4, then it's supposed to run the first for child process until that child process completion information should be generated through exec command or exit function call. Usually we are consider the program that start execution of how the values are printed, nothing but here execution program of corresponding child process or a child program if it is when the print the value before fork Vfork that print the Vfork number after execution of child process that print after Vfork statement. That indicate that how the program is executed when the function is called. If it is required, that possible to go for print some automatic variable on the stack if it is required to start a child process. Otherwise, it's supposed to go for required. What is a modified values are required for child termination when it called exit function or it is supposed to execute completion of the child execution function. Okay, in this slide we have discussed about few points. What is the main difference between fork and v4 function at time of execution of both the functions? What is the address space required for fork function and v4 function? Both the child and parent process will have different address space when it child process supposed to execute from the fork. The similar Vfork is called. Both child and parent process share a common address, nothing but both are pointed to the same locations when Vfork is called. Then second point difference is if it is any modification in address space. Any modification done by the child in its address space is not visible to the parent process as both will have separate copies. Yeah, they should not be identified as specific same location, then it's a problem. Both are entirely different process concepts. Then address space is not possible to visible because parent when the parent process run that is entirely different. When child process run that is also go for hold the information in separate locations. Then here in the Vfork, any modification by child process is visible to both the parent and the child as both will have same copies. Nothing but both are pointed to the same location. For that any modification should be done by any of the process that is displayed with the other process informations also. Then copy and write COW, how this works. This uses copy on write. Which one? The fork function. Vfork does not use copy on write function because it is not required at time of execution of separate copy is not required because both are pointed to the same location. Then execution summary is one more point we discuss about fork and Vfork functions. Both parent and child execute simultaneously, nothing but one after the another. Parent-child process will suspend it until child execution completes. Nothing but either any one process is executed, one more is suspended. That suspended should be revoked and then start execution for next process. Then when that completes, then the same process should be considered. One is suspended, one is executed, another one is suspended, then for execution of next one. Then what is the final outcome of both the functions? With the usage of the informations. Behavior is predictable one only when you are using the for function. Behavior is not predictable because both are pointed to the same locations.